wanna die in your arms. You get light, oh, it gets dark. I'm gonna give you my heart. I don't care if you wanna tear me apart. I don't care if it's in the sky, 'cause I'm full of stars. I think I see you. I think I see you. Cause you're a sky full of stars. I'm gonna give you my heart. Cause you're a sky full of stars. Cause you light up the path. I don't care if you wanna tear me apart. I don't care. It's in the sky, it's in the sky full of stars. I think I saw you. Cause you're a sky full of stars. I wanna die in your arms. You get light, oh, it gets dark. I'm gonna give you my heart. I don't care if you wanna tear me apart. I don't care.
Selamat pagi Bapak Ibu yang sudah hadir. Acara akan kami mulai kurang lebih pukul 10.05 ya, karena masih menunggu beberapa partisipan yang akan segera hadir. Terima kasih.
I wanna die in your arms. Light of the morning star.
Baik, oke, selamat pagi Bapak Ibu. Senang sekali karena Bapak Ibu sudah meluangkan waktu untuk join dalam webinar ini. Pertama-tama, perkenalkan dahulu, saya Hendy Halim sebagai MII VMware Product Specialist yang hari ini akan memandu acara dari awal sampai akhir. Nah, hari ini kita akan sama-sama belajar dan membahas tentang solusi VMware VMC on AWS. Saya yakin sebagian besar dari Bapak Ibu belum familiar dengan solusi VMC on AWS ini. Tapi jangan khawatir, hari ini kita akan berdiskusi apa sih sebenarnya VMware VMC on AWS, dan juga kita akan saksikan bersama-sama demo dari solusi ini, Bapak Ibu. Nah, saya juga ingin sampaikan untuk kenyamanan berjalannya webinar ini, semua mikrofon peserta akan di-mute, dan bila Bapak Ibu ada pertanyaan bisa langsung disampaikan di kolom chat box. Dan kami akan sebisa mungkin menjawab pertanyaan dari Bapak Ibu. Nah, ini merupakan agenda kami pada hari ini. Pertama-tama kita akan mendengarkan opening speech dari Bapak Haryo Eko Nugroho Nusantoro sebagai MII VMware Product Manager. Kemudian dilanjutkan langsung ke sesi pertama yang akan disampaikan oleh Bapak Arthur Chong sebagai VMware Cloud Sales Specialist in Asian. Presentasi ini akan disampaikan dalam bahasa Inggris, jadi mohon Bapak Ibu untuk memperhatikan karena pada akhir sesi, pada akhir webinar ini, kami akan ada kuis berhadiah. Nah, kemudian akan dilanjutkan dari sesi demo yang akan disampaikan oleh Bapak Heru Hernianto sebagai MI VMware Solution Architect. Dan yang terakhir, saya bersama rekan saya William Gunawan sebagai VMware Product Specialist akan menutup webinar ini. Nah, seperti yang telah saya sampaikan sedikit tadi, pada penghujung acara atau penghujung webinar ini akan ada kuis. Dan bagi Bapak Ibu yang secara cepat dan tepat dapat menjawab pertanyaan, akan mendapatkan hadiah yang telah disiapkan oleh MII dan VMware. Nah, sesuai dengan waktu yang sudah disampaikan, acara ini akan berakhir kurang lebih pukul 11.30. Jadi untuk mempersingkat waktu, kita langsung saja mendengarkan opening speech dari Bapak Haryo Eko Nugroho Nusantoro. Bapak Haryo, sudah siap?
Oke, thank you Pak Hendy. Suara saya terdengar jelas nggak?
Iya,
Jelas,
terdengar
Pak.
Pak. Bapak ingin share screen, Pak?
Oke. Enggak sih kayaknya. Oke, pagi Bapak dan Ibu. Perkenalkan nama saya Rio, VMware Product Lead dari Mitra Integrasi Informatika. Perkenalkan saya sekali lagi nih mewakili tim VMware dan tim MI yang bekerja sama menyelenggarakan event kali ini. Mengucapkan selamat datang dan terima kasih atas waktu dan partisipasinya Bapak Ibu semua untuk di acara hari ini, dan semoga Bapak dan Ibu dan keluarga juga dalam kondisi yang sehat walafiat selalu ya. Nah, Kalau kita bicara tentang teknologi VMware, kami MII sebagai sistem integrator tuh pertama kali partnership dengan VMware di tahun 2009. Dan saat itu lini bisnis VMware bisa dikatakan hanya berfokus pada virtualisasi OS lah ya, baik yang sifatnya client device atau yang kalau dulu mungkin seperti namanya VMware Fusion, dan juga yang virtualisasi server Intel-based server lah. Nah, dalam waktu 11 tahun ini didorong perkembangan tren IT secara teknologi itu sudah jauh berkembang dari yang hanya solusi server virtualization yang di on-premise data center sampai ke full stack solution untuk membangun private cloud, dan saat ini hingga ke solusi hybrid cloud yang mana yang akan kita bahas di acara hari ini. Nah, mungkin Bapak dan Ibu juga pernah dengar sebelumnya, salah satu prediksi dari Gartner, mereka menganggap cloud strategi itu salah satu yang penting dan harus diperhatikan oleh perusahaan. Kenapa? Bahkan mereka juga berani men-state bahwa tanpa cloud strategi, suatu perusahaan itu akan tertinggal dibanding kompetitornya. Nah, kenapa? Karena kalau kita bicara teknologi cloud saat ini dan kaitannya dengan infrastruktur IT, cloud teknologi itu salah satu teknologi yang memungkinkan untuk percepatan bisnis gitu ya. Terutama di era modern saat ini yang biasanya bergantung dengan secepat apa aplikasi dan service itu bisa available dan ready gitu. Karena aplikasi sendiri bisa dibilang sekarang sudah menjadi front end sebuah bisnis gitu, menjadi competitive advantage dan pembeda satu perusahaan dengan perusahaan lainnya di mata customer, di mata market. Dan kalau kita bicara adopsi cloud, konsep hybrid cloud atau hybrid cloud yang memadukan environment private dan public, biasanya itu menjadi pendekatan atau arah yang paling realistis dan ideal ya buat suatu perusahaan. Kenapa? Karena hybrid cloud itu memungkinkan kita tetap memaksimalkan benefit dari investasi yang sudah dikeluarkan untuk data center on-prem saat ini, dan juga kalau melihat kondisi, terutama untuk beberapa perusahaan yang bermain di industri regulated, punya regulator, dan majority workload-nya itu mementingkan security dan data governance, itu banyak yang tetap memilih untuk di on-premise data center, terutama untuk critical dan core workload mereka. Di luar itu, biasanya juga perusahaan tuh butuh waktu untuk mengadopsi public cloud. Bisa karena masalah experience, bisa juga karena memang butuh waktu building trust dari manajemen, jadi adopsinya sedikit demi sedikit. Bisa juga ada problem di adopsi skill set baru, karena kan untuk mengadopsi platform baru, cloud yang baru, kadang butuh skill set baru yang dibutuhkan, yang perlu diadopsi oleh tim IT, dan lain sebagainya. Nah, beberapa pertanyaan lain yang juga muncul, terutama bagi perusahaan yang sudah mengadopsi teknologi vSphere, karena kan vSphere ini umum digunakan lah bahkan di Indonesia dan terutama di Indonesia juga, tapi terutama di globally sudah majority perusahaan sudah menggunakan vSphere untuk virtual server mereka di data center mereka. Nah, perusahaan-perusahaan yang sudah mengadopsi vSphere ini biasanya nanti saat mereka diminta atau mereka mulai mau mengadopsi public cloud, akan muncul beberapa pertanyaan. Misal, yang pertama atau yang paling umum tuh, gimana sih cara kami meng-extend on-premise vSphere environment kita, terus nanti kalau melakukan migrasi, tapi juga kita perlu minimalisir risk-nya. Karena seperti kita tahu kalau migrate ke cloud, terutama kalau sudah ada existing application atau existing image yang di data center, itu biasanya ada action untuk convert atau replatforming yang biasanya cukup challenging dan tidak bisa dibilang 100% akan berhasil. Atau ada opsi lainnya, bisa juga yang build new application, full build new di cloud, tapi tentunya akan ada effort lebih kalau mengambil opsi ini. Nah, terus pertanyaan lainnya misal, kalau saya mengadopsi hybrid cloud, gimana sih saya memastikan konsistensi SLA infrastruktur saya, baik yang di on-premise sama di public? Karena kan kalau punya dual SLA pasti akan membingungkan juga untuk user. Dan apakah saya bisa menggunakan satu tools atau manajemen yang sama untuk public cloud dan untuk yang private cloud saya? How to keep it simple to manage? Pertanyaannya akan lebih. Dan gimana kalau ke depannya nanti kita betul-betul akan mengadopsi public cloud, jadi porsi yang workload itu akan majority akan di public cloud. Nah, bagaimana dengan skill set yang sudah tim IT miliki saat ini terkait dengan teknologi VMware, supaya tim saya tetap bisa relevan ke depannya. Nah, di 2 sesi pada pagi hari ini, kita kurang lebih akan membahas yang tadi saya sebutkan tadi udah Bapak. Jadi pertama kita akan melakukan perkenalan solusi VMware VMC, bagaimana solusi ini bisa menjadi jawaban ideal dalam mengadopsi hybrid cloud, terutama bagi Anda yang sudah memiliki aplikasi yang dibangun di atas solusi Peer. Terus juga di sesi kedua akan ada demo singkat untuk memberikan gambaran lebih how this technology works. Dan untuk itu kami juga menyiapkan beberapa skenario yang nanti akan kami tunjukkan. Nah, di dua sesi ini, sesuai yang tadi Pak Hendy sempat sampaikan, apabila dan Bapak Ibu ada pertanyaan, silakan disampaikan melalui chat box tim nanti. Pertanyaan dan Bapak Ibu akan berusaha kami jawab sebaik mungkin di akhir sesi, masing-masing sesi. Oke, tanpa berlama-lama lagi, mungkin kita langsung mulai ya dengan sesi pertama hari ini. So the first session will be delivered by Arthur Chong, who's VMware Cloud Sales Specialist for ASEAN region. Hi, Arthur.
Hey, good morning, Pak Haryo. Thanks for the kind introduction. So let me share my screen. Yep, and
sure.
Can someone confirm that can see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, let me put in a full screen presentation mode.
Okay, yep. Mr. Arthur.
Thanks a lot. All right. Selamat pagi, everyone. Thanks for jumping on this webinar. This is also a very important technology and also a shift in customers' mindset, right? I'm sure when you're talking to your various vendors, a lot of mention are all about the cloud, containers, and security as well. So down in this session, I would like to share with you how we can actually help you to accelerate your cloud adoption, all right, with this new technology called VMware Cloud on AWS. So in the agenda, I will touch upon why consider VMware Cloud on AWS, right? Why not native AWS? Why not native Azure? Why not native Google? I mean, there's so many different cloud platforms out there and also hyperscalers in the market. And I'm sure some of you are already using some of them as well. So why consider VMware Cloud as well? Another point which I feel is also very important is I'm going to touch upon the use cases, right? So what are some of the use cases that you can think of, right, when you're thinking of using VMC on AWS? Is it going to be for disaster recovery, or are you going to use it to accelerate your application development as well? So I'll definitely go through some of these scenarios so that it can help you to frame your thoughts and your minds around the technology itself. The third one is the blind spots, right? So everyone is very excited to go into the cloud, right? They're going to adopting cloud for their journey in developing applications. But there's some blind spots, we call it, very similar to when you are driving or riding a bike. There's some blind spots that you need to look left, look right, in order not to miss out the either the danger that's coming or some of the areas that you might have not thought of as well. So some of the blind spots consideration when you're moving towards the cloud journey. And the fourth one is definitely a real life customer case study where this particular customer, right, in the banking sector, was one of our very first key customers in adopting VMC on AWS. So I would like to share with you why he actually chose VMC, what he used it for, and what the benefits he actually ripped out of. And of course, later I'll hand it over to for demo as well. We'll go through the demo where you can actually see how the VMC migration is being done, the console, the interface. And of course, the last but not least, we'll leave it for some time for questions and answers. You can also, I believe you can also type in the chat box, or maybe come off mute later to ask any of your questions. So I'll go into the first key topic is why VMC on AWS, right? So VMC was actually launched back then in 2019, last year in Singapore itself, and it's meant to serve the customers in the region, in our Southeast Asia region as well. But the technology, of course, was launched way back in US in 201718, right? So it's not new. It's not new to the community. But one of the key reasons that we saw why we actually had to launch this technology is that there's a lot of pressure on the on-prem data center, right? So I'm sure some of you are also managing your current infrastructure on-premise in the data center itself. And you're seeing that there's so many different brands in the data center that you need to manage, so many different vendors that you need to talk to also solve issues when problems come your way. So there's a lot of inflexibility in the architecture, and it also become very, very complicated as well. So whenever the application team might ask you or probe you, say, can you spare some VMs for me to test my code? Some of the IT teams that I talk to say they need to actually scramble because they have reached a certain capacity, or they need to check whether they have enough resources to pass it on to the application team to allow them to do code development, modernizing the application, or developing the next generation application to keep the business running as well, right? So there's a lot of pressures on the infra team and the IT team, and also on the on-prem data center as well. The blue circle that you see is on the lifecycle management, right? So today, a lot of the organizations also find it difficult to automate and manage the entire infrastructure, right? Because there's so many different brands, so many different vendors. It's not easy to integrate everything together. And it should be an automated way of provisioning certain resources, right? So I mentioned application team comes to you, it should be automated. Maybe they just fill in a request form, pass it down, and then it should be automated to provision that particular virtual machine for them to test. But a lot of people today do not have that capability. It has to be a very manual, tedious process. I've seen some customers going through a few change requests in order to get one particular from 1 or 10 VMs provision out. And it can take weeks, right, sometimes. And this also does impact and delay the development of applications, which means slowdown in the business growth as well. So today, we all know that the applications really drive the modern world, the business of the organization. And they also drive certain choices on the infrastructure as well. So what I meant is that certain applications, for instance, let's say an Oracle database. Oracle database sitting in the on-prem data center itself, right? How are you going to take this Oracle database and then put it on a cloud platform, right? Maybe you want to use cloud for speed and agility, right? So how do you put such a heavy application onto the cloud platform itself, right? So there are a few choices. You can choose to either re-platform, means changing the platform from a on-prem running Windows server onto maybe a Linux server running in the cloud, right? That could be one choice. Or you could have to refactor it, right? So refactoring could also mean redesigning the application. So we all know that Oracle database is the backend database. It ties in with the middle layer. It also ties in with the web layer, the web presentation layer for your customers and your other consumers to interface with you as well, right? So you might need to refactor the dependency, right? You need to put up maybe more databases, more web fronts in order to cater it for a cloud. Or you can also deploy hybrid. Most customers will want to maintain what they have already invested in the on-prem data center and then slowly expand it or extend it out to the cloud as well, right? Or you can build cloud native, so you actually build a net new digital native application right onto the cloud itself, and then maybe retire the legacy application itself. The last one is going to replace it with a SaaS application. If there is a SaaS module of it, for instance, a Salesforce, which is a SaaS module of the application, you can also replace it. right? So all these applications, all these different ways of migrating the application, right, onto public cloud, right, or keep it on premise or keep it on edge. There has to be some level of consistency in order to manage it. If there's different consoles, different migration paths, then you're also going to face the same challenge in order to understand how the application is being managed as well. But 9 out of 10 organizations that we have spoken to, the preferred choice is definitely a hybrid cloud itself, where you have already invested so much in the on-prem data center, right? And then you want to slowly extend this on-prem data center to the cloud as well, so that it allows it minimizes risk and minimizes changes as well. So some of you might find this migration plan very familiar, right? So basically this migration plan is also being shared by a lot of the public cloud vendors itself, right? So a lot of the public cloud vendors, before VMC on AWS came in, before the green line actually come in, they had many different ways to migrate an application. So normally what they will do is they will assess your environment, look at your applications, categorize the applications into whether it can be lift and shift or re-platform or even re-architect as well. So that also means there's downtime. There's also a lot of IP changes. There's also a lot of configuration that needs to be done as well before VMC came into the picture, right? So one of the key reasons of why people consider VMC is because VMC main objective, right? Key objective is to move applications that are already sitting on vSphere on-prem as it is, right? Without any IP change, without shutting down the application, minimum configuration itself, and then move it using VMC and its tools to move it on to the VMware Cloud AWS itself. So this means that the risk is really minimized because you're moving everything as it is, right? There's very little changes as well, and you're reducing the complexity of doing a cloud migration itself, right? So we can actually, with VMC as a relocate strategy, we call it a relocate strategy. You don't need to look at re-architecting, repurchasing, rehosting, or re-platform, right? For any of the applications sitting on vSphere. So this means the cost of the migration is also reduced and the risk is also minimized. Hence, this is one of the key reasons why customers are considering using VMC to move their applications from on-prem to the cloud as well. So some of the benefits that we also, when we actually did a survey of our existing VMC customers, is why they also choose VMCs. So the number one benefit you see right at the top is the speed to the cloud, right? So cloud means agility. Cloud means that you're able to provision the resources quickly at the snap of your fingers, right, to any of your stakeholders as well. That is the power of the cloud, right? That is what cloud is really meant to do. So VMC it's also no different there, right? In order to provision an entire data center in the cloud, right, it only takes 65 minutes itself. And to add on one more host, right, it takes about 12 minutes as well. So this one I will touch upon later. The second top benefit or reason why customers do consider VMC is that there is consistency as well. So the same vCenter that you're very familiar with in managing your on-prem VMs is the same vCenter that you'll be using as well to manage the VMs inside the VMC on AWS as well. So that means what? You don't have to go for new training. You don't have to learn new skill sets. You don't have to hire new people, new staff in order to learn this technology, because it's almost the same environment that you'll be using as well. And there's also no refactoring, right? A lot of customers like it because they don't have to call for a migration professional services partner, for instance, to come in and do all the refactoring work, shutting down the application, calling for downtime, working over weekends, right, in order to do the refactoring. If you're going on to native public cloud itself, right, there isn't a need for those things. And of course, the third benefit is the responsiveness, right? So that means that you can actually respond to all your key stakeholders. For instance, your application team. A lot of application teams play a very big part in the business, and they will always come to the IT team for resources, right? If the IT team cannot give resources, then they'll have to find their own way, and a lot of them means that they'll swipe their own credit card, get purchase approvals, run their own native cloud without informing IT team, and then there'll be a lot of security concerns and challenges in managing two very separate environments as well. So these are some of the key reasons why a lot of customers like BVMC itself, right? So let's understand what goes on in the nuts and bolts of VMC on AWS. What's under the hood, right, for this technology? So as you can see that a lot of you are very familiar or are managing current resources in your on-prem data center. So your VMs are here, you're running vSphere, right? You're running vCenter, right? And inside the VMC, so VMC is a subscription service. There is no license for you to install. There's no hardware for you that you need to provision as well. It's a subscription service. Very similar to a Netflix account, right? You just choose your Netflix account, number of months, the quality of your video streams, and that's it. And you're off and running. So same for VMC as well. You just choose for the duration. There's on demand, you choose 1 year, 3 years, and then off you can go. So for VMC, one of the things that comes in the package, I would say, there's also the same vCenter as well. You can also install here to manage your VMs in the VMware Cloud or on-prem as well. There's also comes with the latest version of the vSphere Enterprise, okay? The latest version of the vCenter Enterprise, and the latest version of the NSX Enterprise as well. And we also give you the HCX Hybrid Cloud extension as well. This comes free. So this Hybrid Cloud extension, what it does is for you to build a bridge between your on-premise to the VMC. We can build this bridge over your layer 2 network connection, or if you're already using AWS Direct Connect, you can also build on top of it as well. So once the tunnel is established, we can actually use the Hybrid Cloud extension to do a vMotion of your on-prem VMs to the VMC on AWS as well. Because it's using the same vSphere, you don't have to have the same vSphere edition, right? You can use vSphere 5.0 in your on-prem, 6.0, right? You can use the legacy versions, and we still can able to migrate the VMs over. And on the on-prem itself, right, you don't need to have vCenter installed here. You don't need to have NSX. The basic requirement that you need in your on-prem is the vSphere version itself, right? And of course, the vCenter that you're using. So we can do all the migration of the VMs over. We can do bulk migration. We can migrate 1,000 VMs easily over onto vSphere platform without shutting down, right? Without IP changes. Okay. So that's the capability. And because the software is actually sitting on the AWS bare metal EC2 servers, right? So these are dedicated machines, right? Dedicated servers that we procure from AWS, sitting inside the AWS data center itself, and we'll install our software on top of it as well. So this is not a shared instance, which some of you might be familiar with, the EC2 instance that you see in your AWS account. This is really a bare metal dedicated EC2 server. So every customer that spins out VMC is a dedicated tenant, right? They do not share the same resources with other customers as well. So that means in terms of security, it's dedicated to you and it's very secure. So the second part of the VMC technology is you can integrate any of the AWS services into the VMC itself, right? So example, most of you, I'm sure you're familiar with S3 bucket, right? Which is just a low-cost storage where you can actually subscribe from the AWS account. And then you can actually take the files from your VMC here and drop it into the S3 storage itself, right? So you can actually keep unstructured data, you can keep your backups here, you can keep your files here as well. And of course, if you want to archive it later on to the stage, you can also use AWS other storage options like Glacier, right? You can put it on a cheaper archiving storage as well, or even the Snowball as well. So there's many other various storage options that AWS does provide. And of course, you can also use other AWS services like the Elastic Load Balancer if you're not running one, right? It can help you to tune your applications, balance your applications. You can also use RDS if you want to refactor some of the databases onto RDS as well. So some of the key highlights, right, I would like to mention about this joint technology between VMware and AWS is that besides being dedicated bare metal servers, this day 2 operating model is being supported by VMware ourselves for level 1, level 2, level 3. So what this means is if there is an issue running VMs on the vSphere, you can contact our support through logging a ticket, calling our hotline, or sending an email to us, right? We will help you on this. If there's any patching that needs to be done, so patching is always a big challenge, right, for any organization, because you need to ensure that the patch works properly. You need to have the right builds, right, on hardware, and so on and so on. And you need to spend weekends testing it out. But on the VMC itself, right, because there is no hardware for you to maintain, it's all done by our VMware support. So the patching of the vSphere, the patching of vSAN and NSX are all done by the VMware technical team itself, right? So this, we take away all these day 2 operations and challenges away from you so that you can continue to focus on the project at hand, doing more high value work as well. So how do you subscribe to VMC? What kind of consumption models we offer? So very similar to how AWS offer their consumption model, right? We have a consumption model of either on demand. So you mean on demand means that you can spin up this VMC for hours, few hours, 1 hour, right? Or you can spin it for a couple of days or weeks. So some customers will want to use this maybe for DR simulation exercise. So they just want to carry out a certain disaster recovery exercise for 1 day or 2-3 days, and they'll just spin it up, and after which they can spin it down once the DR exercise has finished. But most of the customers out there will actually take up 1 year or 3 years because maybe they are shifting production workloads onto it, or conducting real life scenarios, right, on the VMC. So it takes 65 minutes only to create the entire data center in the cloud for you. So don't just look at it. There's only bare metal server, vSphere, vSAN, and the whole networking, the whole power, the whole cooling, right? The whole security aspect of it, it's all taken care for you, and it only takes 65 minutes to spin up the entire data center for you. And if you're running out of capacity or compute or power, you can actually add on one more VMC host, and it takes only 12 minutes itself. So you don't have to wait for hardware, right? So that really solves a major challenge in maintaining an on-prem data center. And of course, it's also portable, right? Portable meaning to say that it's not a one-way in or one-way traffic into the public cloud. Unlike what native AWS, native Azure are doing, right? It's a one-way in. If you want to come out, you have to do more refactoring or re-architect the solution back out. But for VMC on AWS, it's really a two-way street. You can actually vMotion the VMs into VMC, And for certain reasons, maybe you want to vMotion it back to on-prem, we will allow you to do so, so long as the HCX, the hybrid cloud extension, is being established. There's also an SLA tied to this as well. So it's a legal binding contract. There's a SLA of 99.9% for one availability zone. So in Singapore, we have 3 AZs itself, we call it. So if you're only choosing one, then the SLA is 99.9%. If you have high availability or critical applications that need very high SLA, you can also stretch it over 2 AZs, right? You can have 99.99%. So, and of course, you have direct access to all the native AWS services. So this is the secret sauce, as I mentioned, the HCX itself. So once we set up the HCX over your stretch 2 network itself, or over Direct Connect if you're using AWS Direct Connect, right? We will install a virtual appliance of the HCX over here, right, in your on-prem vCenter environment, right, and connect it to our VMC on AWS. And then we'll use the vMotion technology behind it to actually vMotion any of the VMs over onto VMC itself. So as I mentioned, there is no need to do a reboot, a shutting down. I have customers running a live video stream while we actually vMotion that video stream application over onto VMC. And there was very little latency, lag, or even downtime at all. Customers, or even the customer was able to access the video stream and continue to watch it itself. So another big aspect is, of course, we will ask is on the public cloud, what is the security construct of it, right? Is it very secure? And especially, we don't have a data center in Indonesia itself, but AWS, of course, has said that they're building one. Currently, of course, the data center to serve the regions in Singapore. The security aspect of it is, of course, very important. So as I mentioned, in Singapore itself, we have 3 data centers, physical data centers run by AWS itself, right? So each of the AZs, we call it each of the data center as an AZ itself, right? It's a dedicated bare metal server for you, right? And the storage in the hard disk itself are all encrypted as well. So if by any chance any of the customers, the data get hacked by someone breaking into the data center and stealing one of the hard drives, the storage itself is still encrypted. So you don't have to worry that the data will be leaked out. And of course, in the NSX component that we provide in the VMC itself, NSX stands for Network and Security Exchange itself. The NSX comes with North-South firewall, East-West firewall, allows you to do the firewall blocking itself, and also comes with micro-segmentation if you want to do segmenting of different virtual networks as well. And we also allow you to still install any of the third-party products. If you're using a Palo Alto firewall, Checkpoint firewall, or even a Trend Micro or McAfee endpoint, you can still install it in the VMC itself and sync the 2 policies and ensure that your security policies are still up and running. So I'll touch upon the use cases itself. So use case itself, there are quite a lot. I would say that the VMC itself is really like a Swiss Army knife. It's a multi-purpose tool. It can be used for various use cases. So, but one of the first key use case that I often seen with many organizations is that they might have a few physical on-prem data centers, but they're looking to consolidate the data centers. Maybe they want to reduce their CapEx investments and shift it more to an OpEx operating model. So they might reduce from maybe, instead of having 3 physical data centers, they might reduce to 2. So they might want to shift a lot of the workloads, applications onto VMC on AWS, right? We have seen customers doing that. They do a partial DC evacuation. But of course, there are a lot of customers who do an entire DC evacuation, right, for their production workloads, financial applications onto VMC, and it's still up and running as per usual as well. Another good use case is development and testing, right, of the applications. So a lot of customers, when they want to maybe start small with VMC, instead of an entire big bang, they might want to test the non-production environment, non-production workloads. So they would handpick a few test and dev development as well. There are also organizations, customers out there who actually have their application coding team, right, to use VMC for testing of their codes on applications they're developing. So this means there's no disruption to the on-prem environment. This also means that security is also, layer is also being added and divided between the on-prem resources and the cloud as well. So this makes it very secure for the customer to run the testing and coding of the development work. Another very good use case that we have seen because of this current COVID situation is, because of the COVID situation, everyone needs to work from home. Everyone is entering into some form of lockdown, right? So because of the working from home requires a lot of resources, and a lot of customers run VDI environments, right? It could be our Horizon VDI on VMC, or it could be Citrix as well, VDI on VMC as well. And because of that, they couldn't provision resources fast enough for the on-prem data center itself. When they try to order more hardware into the on-prem data center, they've got to wait 3, 6, or even 9 months as well to get the hardware shipped in. So the next best thing to do is to extend the on-prem environment to VMC, right? For VMC, as I mentioned, we took 65 minutes to provision the entire SDDC, 12 minutes to add on a host. And many customers do that currently, running the VDI environment onto VMC as an extension of the on-prem data center itself. So when the lockdown lifts, right, or when more and more people starts to go back to office, when government allows, they can actually start to spin down the VMC, right? They can start to reduce their dependency on the VMC itself. The last one that we saw in terms of modernizing applications is the use of Kubernetes, right? So a lot of people are exploring how can Kubernetes and containers help them to divide the applications, right, into smaller packages, less dependency, so that they can actually shift it around as well. So we have customers who have used Pivotal, right, our Pivotal Kubernetes on VMC. We have also seen customers using Red Hat OpenShift Kubernetes on VMC as well. So where they can actually spin up quickly the VMs, install the Kubernetes on top of it, and run the container platform as well. So this is also a very good use case to modernize the workloads. So what are some of the blind spots, right? Some of the blind spots, as I mentioned, is when you're thinking of moving the applications to the cloud, right? You got to think, what is the migration path that the application is going to take? Is there going to be a lot of refactoring, rework, right? If you just move it to public cloud itself, because there's a lot of dependency, as I mentioned, for an application itself. You can't just take part of it, shift it onto public cloud, and leave the other part hanging in the on-prem environment. It will be best or more ideal to shift the entire application onto the public cloud. When you do that, there might be a lot of services that require to do that, right? And because of that, time, money, and risk are also increased as well. The second blind spot, of course, is the talent reskilling, right? To go onto public cloud, right, you have to learn new skills. For instance, AWS is using CloudWatch to manage their virtual instances on the AWS environment. You also need to learn how do they operate their in ways of managing and provisioning the virtual instances as well, right? So this is also one of the blind spots. The third one is, of course, the optionality and lock-in as well. So as I mentioned, it's a one-way into public cloud, right? But with VMC, we give you the option that you can actually shift the workloads. So today, we have announced VMC on AWS. Very soon, we'll be announcing VMC on Azure. Next year, we'll also be having VMC on Google, VMC on Oracle. So you can actually take this workload and shift it around as well, right? We will give you the freedom of choice. We do not lock you in as well. The last one is the day two operations of it. The day two aspects, the cost of managing the public cloud as well. So some of the bills that I've seen from other customers is that the egress charges can be high. There's a lot of IP changes. Managing and operating that environment is also not so seamless. They can't automate it as well, right? So all this becomes a operational cost, right? Because it's all after closing the deal, and then you realize that it's also not so straightforward to operate. So with VMC, of course, we have our vRealize suite, that can also help you to do hybrid cloud automation, provisioning on the VMs quickly, and all this day two aspect is also very important to consider as well. I'll skip this one, as mentioned. So this part is that a lot of comparison today in terms of cost. So this is a survey also, again, we have done with a lot of customers in terms of deploying 1,000 VMs, right? How much does it cost to actually deploy this 1,000 VMs onto, whether it's a traditional on-prem, which some of you are already managing as well, or in our private cloud, where we install our vCloud Foundation stacked with the vSAN, NSX components as well, but running in the on-prem environment, or if you actually ship it to public cloud, how much does it cost? So as you can see here with an on-prem environment, the cost in terms of deploying 1,000 VMs still pretty high, right? Because of the multiple brands that you need to manage as well. So for private cloud, it can go down to 2.9. For native itself, native public cloud, the cost can be a lot lower when they present to you. But the main bulk of the cost will come in the migration cost, the rework, the refactoring cost of it, which some of the professional migration partners can easily charge maybe a $500 per VM to 1,000 per VM, depending on how complex the VM is. Right? So a lot of the charges and costs will go into that migration professional service as well. So VMC itself, we can actually expect certain level of savings itself, right? As compared with an on-prem environment, we see about a 40% drop in terms of savings. So I've touched on this itself. This is another example of 3,000 VMs over 3 years. The second aspect of us, the economics of it, is the time and the effort being reduced, right? So a lot of the public cloud vendors, they can come in and say that you take me 3 months to help you to migrate 200 VMs. But when they actually do the actual work, when they start doing it itself, the timelines get shifted because they realize that it can be quite complicated to move a certain workload itself. So a lot of times they'll look for the easy ones, the lift and shift ones, or create digital native. But the complicated ones, like the ones that involve SAP databases, SQL, Oracle, they will actually leave it to last, and it can take quite some time as well, right? So we can actually help you to eliminate and reduce the time taken. So what does the VMC actually comprise of, right? So first, in today's world itself, you can see that you are managing all these things in your environment, right? Real estate, facilities, the power and cooling needed to chill the servers, the storage, networking, right? The SAN switches, right? And everything, all right. And of course, on top of it, you will install your OS, your own applications, and of course, the way you manage the entire data center itself. So with this, VMC itself can actually shrink everything, right? Anything under the orange bar onto the blue color here, the VMC on AWS itself. Right. So a lot of the C-level conversations that when we have, they are looking at from this kind of aspect where we can actually help them to reduce the number of vendor contracts they are managing, right? And of course, the budget itself, and also the data center costs, right? So a lot are looking at the data center costs where they have to incur hefty bills in terms of the cooling, the power, right? So all this can be reduced with VMC on AWS. Looking at the time, just to be conscious of it. This is a sample phase approach as well. So we normally, of course, we can shift every all the vSphere workloads in one big bank. But in any of the VMC projects that we do, we of course look at it, also assess the environment, and gain the customer's confidence, right? Increase their confidence as we go in different phases as well. So normally for first phase, if we are migrating some of the workloads, we'll tend to migrate the test and dev workloads first, because these are non-production, does not impact the business operations itself. We'll move it over in phase 1. And in phase 2, right, when the test and dev workloads are running well, moved as it is, right? Normal, the operations are normal. We'll look at the second batch of production workloads, right? So these are also the could be the non-critical production workloads. We're shifting over. So we'll shift it over, and then in the last phase, we'll shift everything once the non-critical production workloads are tested safely and right. So normally we'll break down into 3 phases, and depending on the customer's appetite and timeline as well. So in terms of pricing and also the so-called the metal instance type that we have, right? So today VMC comes in 2 flavors. One is the i3 metal itself, right? Where it comes with 36 cores in the server, 5 to 12 gigs in the memory, and of course 10.7 terabytes of raw storage capacity. And we're running NVMe flash memory storage itself. So one of the fastest storage that you can expect. So this is actually an entire hyper-converged infrastructure we're running. And for i3 metal is meant for general workloads. So we can do the sizing for you, or MI can also help you to do the sizing over here. The second flavor we also have is the i3 EN. EN stands for enhanced. So it's an enhanced version of i3. We have 48 cores, 768 memory, right? 768 gigs of memory, and 45.8 terabyte raw capacity. So you can see here, this is a public website. If you go and Google for VMC on AWS, you can come to the pricing here. So as I mentioned, there's 3 models of pricing: on demand, where we charge about 10 USD per hour for Singapore region. If you choose US region, Japan, Tokyo region, Australia region, you'll get different hourly rates. So be sure to choose the correct region for your usage. And Singapore is definitely the closest to you. And then we have the subscription model, where you actually get 30% cost savings, right? As compared to on demand, you get about 7 USD per hour. And for 3-year subscription, you get about 50% cost savings as compared to on demand. So you get about 5 USD per hour and so on. And it's the same for i3 EN. So i3 EN is more, I would say, for memory intensive, more storage intensive workloads that needs it, right? Could be Oracle, could be SAP, could be SQL. So today, the minimum config itself is 2 hosts, right? It used to be 3, but we have selected 2 now. We have dropped down to 2. So each host can run about 30 to about 50 VMs itself. So 2 hosts can run about 60 to 100 VMs already, right? Depending on your VM profile, right? This one we will have to do sizing. So as I mentioned, you can choose the host type, select the region, and choose the currency as well. And all these are publicly available, right, on our VMware Cloud website. So I want to share with you the customer case that I was talking about. UOB, United Overseas Bank, is the first bank in Southeast Asia to adopt VMC itself. So this was done last year, April 2019. And this article was actually, I took this article out from Business Insider itself. So for UOB's case, they actually had wanted to use VMC after seeing the actual demo during one of the VMworld sessions itself. So they have a lot of application developers sitting in Southeast Asia region itself. So what these application developers today, before VMC came into the picture, was that the application developers were leveraging on resources provided by the IT infrastructure team, was using on-prem data center resources and providing all these resources. And because, of course, UOB wants to be one of the leading digital banks, right? So they have developed a lot of applications for mobile platforms, for the consumer, right? As you can see, more and more banks are relying on applications and online presence to do your transactions. Very seldom today you go into a physical bank branch to draw money, to do telegraphic transfers of money. You'll be using an application today. So the same for UOB. They are developing a lot of applications today to bring this transactions right closer to the user at home as well. So with so many developers developing and enhancing on this project, they need to find a very quick way to provide resources as well. So VMC was the answer for them, right? So today they're using VMC to provide an isolated environment, right, for all these developers to test the code, right? Once the code has been QA, they can carry on and migrate some of the code back to on-prem for further testing if they want to as well, right? So this is how it has been running today, and the CIO has been was very pleased with the way that how he actually uses technology to modernize his entire framework. And today, because of the current pandemic situation, UOB is also using the VMC on AWS as a way to provide a VDI environment for their work from home employees as well. So as I mentioned before, VMC is a multi-purpose tool, right? You can use it for different various scenarios and use cases. So when suddenly 3,000 employees need to work from home, right, overnight because of the lockdown that happened about 6 to 8 months ago, UOB need to find a quick way to provide these resources. And their on-prem data center was really reaching maximum capacity. And when they try to ship in the hardware, right, Dell EMC will say, sorry, it take about 3 months, 6 months, and they didn't have time to sit around and wait for that, right? So they actually use VMC, right? They add more hosts, right? Carve out a different virtual private network itself, or VPC, you call it, virtual private cloud, and increase the number of hosts itself. And this was all done over one weekend. We actually sat down, did a lot of planning, and we used one weekend to help the customer to provision the VMC on AWS, test out the networking connections, the security construct, and everything was ready to go on Monday morning. Right, so Monday morning, all the employees log on from home with the VDI environment, and it was running smoothly. Right, so it's a fantastic use case. Now, of course, with our partial lockdown being lifted, more and more employees are starting to return back to the UOB office. They could actually start to reduce the number of hosts on the VMC part for this work from home purpose itself. So this was become a very fantastic use case, and the CIO was very pleased. And a lot of the other customers are also starting to look at their adoption, their use case on this, right? And we actually have more and more customers asking how they can actually do either something similar or even move their production workloads onto VMC on AWS, right? So with that, I come to the end of my presentation. So thanks to all for staying throughout. Now I'll hand it over to the next person who will do a demo for you on VMC on AWS.
Okay.
Yep. Let me stop sharing.
Okay.
Let me find the console. Yeah. Okay. I've stopped sharing.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Arthur, for the sharing. Now we know a lot of things about the solution, right? And I hope it will be a good listen for all of us. And Bapak Ibu, kita sudah belajar banyak nih dari secara teori apa sih VMC on AWS. Nah, Bapak Ibu, saya yakin juga penasaran bagaimana sih praktek penggunaan solusi ini. Nah, oleh sebab itu, tanpa berlama-lama kita akan lanjut ke sesi kedua, yaitu demo solutions oleh Bapak Heru Hernianto. Pak Heru.
Baik, terima kasih Pak Edi. Oke, thank you Archer for the introduction for VMC on AWS. Oke, selamat pagi Bapak dan Ibu sekalian. Saya di sini mungkin akan sedikit menjelaskan mengenai demo VMware Cloud on AWS ya. Jadi memang di sini kalau screen saya sudah kelihatan ya?
Sudah Pak, sudah.
Sudah, oke baik. Oke, Jadi kurang lebih seperti yang dijelaskan oleh Arthur sebelumnya, VMC on AWS ini memang merupakan salah satu solusi di mana nanti sudah disiapkan bare metal servernya, ada vSphere-nya juga di sana, sudah ada storage virtualization-nya menggunakan vSAN, ada juga network virtualization-nya dengan NSX, plus vCenter yang ada di AWS juga. Jadi kalau seandainya Bapak dan Ibu memang butuh kira-kira colocation ataupun di as a service ataupun solusi lain seperti contohnya tadi VDI ya. Jadi kita bisa dengan mudah request service-nya di AWS. Jadi seandainya Bapak dan Ibu mau migrate VM itu dapat dengan mudah mengkonekkan vCenter yang ada di on-premise masing-masing data center dengan VMware yang ada di cloud AWS seperti itu. Oke, jadi tanpa berlama-lama saya akan sedikit demo. Jadi di sini saya ada sedikit portal ya. Jadi demonya menggunakan VMware Hands-on Lab. Mungkin Bapak dan Ibu pernah akses sebelumnya. Di sini merupakan demo offline. Jadi hanya sekitar gambarannya seperti apa, tapi memang tidak berbeda jauh dengan yang di real environment. Jadi caranya cukup mudah. Pertama kali pada saat customer request solusi VMC on AWS ini, tinggal sign in ke portalnya VMware Cloud Services di sini. Saya contohkan. Sini login dahulu. Nah, setelah login nanti akan ada tampilan seperti ini. Jadi VMware Cloud AWS. Kalau untuk periode sekarang memang baru bekerja sama dengan AWS ya. Jadi kedepannya mungkin nanti akan bekerja sama dengan Google, Azure, dan lain-lain seperti yang dijelaskan Arthur sebelumnya. Jadi setelah masuk, kita pertama yang harus kita lakukan adalah create SDDC. SDDC ini merupakan tadi gabungan dari solusi tadi yang saya sebutkan. Jadi kita bisa pilih juga vendor cloud providernya. Di sini kita tinggal pilih AWS. Kemudian nanti kita juga bisa pilih regionnya. Kalau di sini memang kalau secara offline yang dipersiapkan adalah di Oregon region. Kemudian deployment-nya juga kita bisa pilih di sini multi host. Kita bisa kasih nama juga. Ini sesuai dengan kebutuhan. Jadi naming dari sisi hosting juga kita bisa pilih jumlah hostnya. Seperti yang dijelaskan Arthur tadi, minimumnya karena sudah ada teknologi vSAN, di mana kita bisa proteksi juga secara availability ya. Jadi di sini saya contohkan 3 host. Kemudian nanti di sini ada kira-kira spesifikasi hostnya. Jadi kalau di sini dijelaskan tadi kan ada 2 model ya, ada yang i3. Nah di sini hostingnya ada 2 soket prosesor, kemudian prosesornya 36 core, memori per hostnya 512 GB, kemudian storage secara storage 10,7 tera storage. Tadi sudah ada SSD juga. Jadi kalau kita request total kapasitinya ada seperti di bawah ini. Saya tinggal next aja. Kemudian nanti secara otomatis ini akan dibangun menggunakan teknologi CloudFormation dari AWS. Ini akan dibangun langsung. Jadi kita konfirmasi dulu. Setelah konfirmasi, proses ini akan langsung berjalan di background. Jadi waktunya tadi seperti dijelaskan Arthur ya kurang lebih sekitar 1-2 jam lah paling lama. Ini langsung akan di-provide oleh VMC on AWS tadi. Nanti juga kita bisa pilih juga account-nya. Jadi nanti sebelum ini memang ada proses create account menggunakan AWS ya. VPC ini merupakan virtual private cloud atau kalau kita bilangnya lebih ke arah network configuration. Jadi di sini kita konfigurasi dulu subnetnya seperti apa. Kemudian CIDR blocknya kita configure juga. Setelah itu nanti konfirmasi akan dideploy SDDC. Nah, ini prosesnya langsung berjalan di background. Jadi ini offline jadi langsung di-provide secara otomatis. Jadi kalau dilihat di sini di konsolnya sudah ada satu environment di mana sudah terdiri dari 3 host, ada CPU-nya, total compute power-nya seperti ini, 249 GHz. Memorinya karena 3 host, jadi 1,5 tera, plus storage usable-nya sekitar 30 tera. Ini langsung bisa dipergunakan untuk Bapak dan Ibu misalnya mau bikin VM di sana, kemudian ataupun migrate, ataupun bisa dijadikan sebagai di as a service juga, menggunakan mungkin SRM, kalau mungkin Bapak dan Ibu sudah pernah menggunakan juga ya. Nah, ini sudah ada. Konfigurasinya nanti kita tinggal add user sesuai dengan admin ataupun memang yang role yang diperbolehkan untuk akses ke sana. Nah, ini biasa konfigurasinya tinggal add user biasa. Kemudian nanti kita bisa pilih juga role-nya, apakah dia sebagai admin ataukah sebagai network admin. Di sini ada NSX cloud admin ataupun sebagai auditor, jadi macam-macam service-nya. Setelah sudah, nanti ini langsung bisa dipergunakan. Nah, ini dia. Kemudian ini kan saya contohkan yang 3 host ya. Kalau seandainya Bapak Ibu, sekarang VM saya sudah cukup penuh nih, saya mau nambah host lagi. Nah, dapat dengan mudah tinggal kita add host saja di sini. Saya tinggal nambah, jadi sama pilihannya otomatis di region yang sama karena kita add host. Di sini saya contohkan 1 host untuk penambahannya. Sama nanti konfirmasinya ada total cluster capacity jadi 8 soket, kemudian 144 core, memori jadi 2 tera, kemudian storage-nya sekitar ya tadi penambahannya. Jadi ini segini, kita add host. Nah, ini langsung berjalan di background, ya kurang lebih sekitar 1-2 jam. Nanti kita refresh, nah ini sudah jadi sebetulnya. Jadi cara create-nya dengan mudah, kita tinggal masuk ke portalnya tadi, VMware di sini, vmware.com. Nah, ini sudah bisa dipakai untuk Bapak dan Ibu akses ke sana. Gitu. Cara aksesnya, sebelum kita akses ke sana, mungkin saya contohkan juga untuk konfigurasi networking-nya ya, karena nanti kita akan konfigurasi networking. Jadi ini secara environment servernya sudah ready, storage sudah ready, tinggal kita configure networknya. Nah, setelah jadi di sini, saya contohkan yang tadi sudah lanjutannya, yang 4 host tadi, kita tinggal kita masuk ke bagian networknya dan security. Jadi nanti kita konfigurasi juga IP addressing-nya, kemudian koneksinya, baik itu menggunakan VPN ataupun menggunakan direct connect. Nah, di sini saya contohkan tambahin segmen baru, contohkan menggunakan web tier, kita kasih IP address biasa di sini, kemudian kita save, tambah lagi, saya application, berikut juga dengan DB ya, saya tambahkan dulu. Jadi biasanya kan kalau di environment ada 3 tier ya, web app dan DB. Nah, ini sudah jadi kurang lebih segmen basicnya. Nanti setelah itu nanti akan muncul di sini untuk koneksi ke lokal on-premise seperti apa. Jadi kita bisa menggunakan VPN yang paling basic. Nah, ini kita konfigurasi VPN IPsec-nya. Addressing-nya juga ada gateway-nya. Nah, ini konfigurasi algoritmnya dulu. Nah, setelah di save tadi, ini otomatis kalau sudah connect, ini bisa langsung dipakai Bapak dan Ibu untuk connect ke internal on-premise data center. Jadi langsung sudah terhubung ya di VMC AWS ke on-premise. Nah, setelah kita konfigurasi tadi, saya contohkan yang VPN. Ini kita cara deploy VM-nya juga simple, jadi nanti tinggal akses langsung ke portalnya VMware Cloud. Ini sudah disiapkan, jadi nanti masuk ke sini. Jadi di sini kelihatan ya, ini vCenter-nya yang ada di cloud. Loginnya nanti sudah diberikan langsung untuk login, jadi bisa langsung diakses. Nah, ini sudah jadi environment-nya. Jadi kelihatan cluster-nya tadi, karena ada 4 host, jadi total host-nya ada 4. Jadi ini sama persis dengan seperti tampilan di vSphere di lokal juga. Nah, kita coba bangun VM baru. Nah, contohnya di sini saya contohkan kita deploy dari OVF template. Jadi memang sudah ada kira-kira OVF template-nya. Nanti kita bisa browse ke lokal nih. Caranya sama persis dengan bikin VM yang mungkin Bapak dan Ibu sering lakukan ya, kalau seandainya deploy dari OVF. Nah, ini contohkan untuk deploy web. Sama ini, kita kasih namingnya, kemudian kita pilih compute resource-nya mana, kemudian kita pilih storage-nya. Nah, storage-nya di sini memang karena sudah di-provide menggunakan vSAN, jadi kita juga bisa pilih nanti, nah ini mau baik itu tin ataupun tick. Kita pilih workload data store, kita kasih IP. Nah, ini sebetulnya secara proses langsung dia berjalan di background. Ya, ini kurang lebih jadinya ini akan langsung muncul di environment di cloud, di VMC atau AWS tadi. Nah, ini sudah langsung berjalan. Kemudian saya contohkan lagi untuk deploy sisanya. Ada kira-kira 6 VM baru. Contohnya di sini. Kemudian nanti kita bisa configure juga cara profilnya ya. Profilnya untuk per VM itu. Misalnya saya bikin profile untuk storage di sini. Ini kalau Bapak dan Ibu pernah pakai vSAN, sama persis jadi tampilannya. Nah, ini kita konfigurasi failure to tolerate-nya. Jadi, nah ini konfigurasinya biasa, bisa menggunakan RAID 1, RAID 5, ataupun RAID 6. Di sini saya contohkan menggunakan RAID 5. Oke, ini setelah ini langsung jadi, langsung bisa diakses sih. Jadi sama persis di sini. Jadi untuk konfigurasi sama persis, baik itu di vCenter di on-premise ataupun di lokal ataupun yang di AWS. Nah, ini cara bikin VM seperti ini. Nah, kemudian tadi seperti dijelaskan aku, kita akan coba konekkan vCenter yang ada di on-premise dengan yang ada di cloud AWS. Nah, caranya untuk migrasi ataupun tadi kalau misalnya kita mau migrate, kita ada dua cara sebetulnya. Kita bisa menggunakan namanya vCenter Link Mode. Nah, ini contohnya saya jelaskan vCenter Link Mode, ataupun ada namanya HCX, Hybrid Cloud Extension. Nah, kalau itu memang aksesoris tambahan dari VMC-nya, jadi tinggal di-install juga sama. Nah, yang ini saya akan contohkan menggunakan Link Mode dulu. Jadi, yang dibutuhkan pertama adalah kita deploy namanya vCenter Cloud Gateway on-premise. Ini saya sudah contohkan, sudah deploy secara lokal. Terus kita konfigurasi cara link mode vCenter-nya. Jadi nanti vCenter yang ada di lokal on-premise dengan yang ada di AWS langsung terhubung. Ini kira-kira gambarannya seperti ini. Jadi yang di data center dengan yang di VMC AWS sudah terhubung. Ini sama, tinggal kita pairing dulu. Kita install, oke. Nah, ini sudah kita konekkan tadi. Ini tadi kalau aksesnya dari sini sebetulnya, kita copy passwordnya. Jadi kita pairing yang di AWS dulu. Ini pairingnya dengan yang di lokal. Nah, ini proses link mode-nya sudah dikonfigurasi. Nanti begitu login, di sini saya contohkan loginnya adalah yang ke lokal ya, jadi di on-premise. Loginnya berbeda karena ini menggunakan yang di lokal. Dia sudah langsung terhubung dengan yang di SDDC, jadi kelihatannya ini yang di lokal. Jadi cluster naming-nya pun berbeda dengan yang di AWS tadi. Jadi VM-nya juga sudah ada banyak. Nah, ini dengan yang ada di SDDC Data Center ataupun di AWS tadi. Nah, ini dia. Jadi sudah terhubung secara langsung vCenter-nya yang di on-premise dengan yang di AWS. Oke. Nah, kemudian kita coba melakukan migrate. Di sini saya contohkan untuk migrate, karena sudah terhubung bisa langsung migrate. Migrate kalau kita mau langsung ke AWS langsung, kita bisa change both compute resource and storage. Jadi kita langsung migrate dari lokal ke AWS langsung. Nah ini caranya sama persis, common yang biasa dilakukan vMotion sudah sering, jadi ini sama persis tampilannya. Pilih resource pool, kemudian pilih storage-nya. Nah, foldernya kita bisa pilih juga, kemudian networking-nya sama. Kita bisa bikin konfigurasi networking juga. Setelah itu finish, nah prosesnya langsung berjalan seperti layaknya vMotion biasa. Cuma dalam halnya di sini kita migrate-nya dari on-premise ke AWS-nya langsung, seperti itu. Nah ini contohnya kurang lebih seperti ini. Untuk konfigurasi menggunakan link mode dari vCenter. Cara lainnya juga kita bisa menggunakan HCX tadi, Hybrid Cloud Extension. Ini saya contohkan dengan HCX tadi. Jadi pada saat kita pilih service-nya di portalnya VMC on AWS tadi, kita bisa lihat ada dua add-on di sini. Ada namanya HCX, Hybrid Cloud Extension, ataupun Set Recovery. Set Recovery nanti saya jelaskan di belakang. Nah ini kalau untuk HCX tadi, ini kita tinggal open portalnya langsung. Nah kita deploy dulu. Deploy-nya itu nanti yang di AWS dulu. Kita deploy HCX appliance-nya. Setelah di deploy, nanti ada key-nya yang akan di-pair dengan di lokal. Nah, open vCenter yang di cloud. Oke, sedang deploy. Nanti akan terdeploy namanya HCX Cloud Manager. Ini di-deploy langsung. Nanti kita masuk ke portalnya, kalau sudah. Nah, ini prosesnya. Setelah di-deploy di cloud, kita deploy juga di on-premise. Jadi kita akan download HCX-nya ke on-premise vCenter juga. Nanti kita deploy di on-premise. Ini di lokal, kita deploy juga sama. Nah, di sini ada namanya HCX Enterprise, kita deploy. Pilih storage-nya juga. Nanti kita pairing dengan passwordnya juga. Nah, setelah sudah kita finish, ini akan terdeploy di lokal. Setelah itu nanti kita pairing. Ini kita on dulu VM-nya yang sudah di on-premise. Login ke portal HCX yang ada di on-premise juga. Nah, dia akan muncul ini. Nah, karena ini sudah ada VMC on AWS, jadi HCX ini akan disediakan gratis. Jadi nanti license key langsung di-provide. Kita tinggal pairing aja di sini. Ini kita konfigurasi firewall dan lain-lain. Ini saya skip prosesnya karena cukup panjang. Jadi nanti kurang lebih tampilannya seperti ini yang di lokal. Jadi kalau seandainya kita masuk ke salah satu VM, nanti akan muncul ini. Add-on namanya AJX Actions. Kita bisa pilih apakah kita mau migrate ataupun kita bisa protect seperti like SRM tadi. Jadi kita bisa migrate, kita pilih destination foldernya, kemudian kita juga bisa pilih tadi ini foldernya seperti computer resource-nya, terus storage. Nah ini migration-nya kita sama seperti vMotion, sebetulnya mirip seperti tadi remote. Pilih network-nya, setelah itu selesai. Nah ini prosesnya sama, jadi kita bisa langsung pairing dengan ICX yang ada di AWS tadi. Nah ini proses migration sudah berjalan, jadi akan muncul tampilannya seperti di sini. Nah ini kalau kita mau migrate block juga bisa, kita tinggal pilih VM-VM-nya mana saja. Nah ini contohnya kita production app, DB, dan web, kita migrate secara bersamaan. Jadi like-nya seperti vCenter yang ada di on-premise, jadi sama persis tampilannya. Cuma mungkin bedanya di sini menggunakan versi terbaru ya, yang ada di AWS tadi. Oke, nah ini sudah berjalan bug migration prosesnya. Tinggal kita finish, prosesnya langsung running berjalan sampai selesai. Ya, ini kurang lebih demo yang menggunakan Ajax tadi. Nah terakhir demo saya untuk SRM ya, jadi untuk kebutuhan DRS service, kita bisa menggunakan Site Recovery Manager SRM. Kalau Bapak dan Ibu sudah familiar ataupun sudah pernah pakai, sebetulnya tampilannya mirip sama persis. Jadi nanti kita tinggal pairing saja. Yang ada di on-premise di sini saya akses ke lokal. Tinggal pairing Site Recovery yang ada di lokal dengan yang ada di AWS tadi. Nah ini kita pairing. Input yang ada di cloud. Nah ini tinggal connect security credential-nya untuk sertifikat. Nah ini sebetulnya sudah pairing ya. Jadi kalau sudah pairing di sini bisa langsung kita konfigurasi network mapping-nya, kemudian storage mapping-nya. Nah, ini biasa, like-nya seperti konfigurasi SRM biasa sih. Terus ini untuk failback-nya, untuk resource mapping dari cloud ke on-premise sebaliknya. Folder mapping juga sama. Ya ini basic sih, basic SRM kalau misalnya Bapak dan Ibu pernah pakai. Oke. Nah sama juga reverse mapping untuk directory folder mapping ya. Nah kemudian resource mapping untuk compute-nya yang mau di-migrate, host-nya yang mana. Terakhir ada storage policy sama placeholder. Jadi kalau seandainya Bapak di lokal masih menggunakan storage nggak masalah. Jadi sama persis, jadi tinggal kita migrate juga ke vSphere sama aja. Nah terakhir ada placeholder. ditaruh di data store yang mana. Nah, kita bisa pilih nih, kalau misal lokal menggunakan set storage, kita bisa pilih yang di set storage. Nah, ini pilih yang di cloud. Nah, setelah sudah, sebetulnya sih kita proteksi biasa seperti like-nya SRM. Jadi kita masuk ke VM-nya, kita masuk ke set recovery dan configure replication. Nah, itu langsung berjalan di background. Ini targetnya kita bisa pilih yang ke DR-nya ke VMC on AWS tadi. Kemudian ini juga sama, kita pilih RPO-nya mau berapa lama. Nah, di sini kan memang disediakan bisa sampai 5 menit sampai 1 hari ya 24 jam metode replikasi RPO-nya. Nah, kasih nama protection filter recovery plan, setelah itu finish, selesai. Nah, ini proses langsung berjalan. Proses aplikasinya berjalan. Ini seperti ini, jadi langsung berjalan di background. Ini begitu ada problem, kita bisa one hit button langsung migrate sama like-nya seperti SRM. Jadi, ya kurang lebih demo saya pada hari ini mengenai VMC on AWS, mulai dari setup-nya, kemudian konfigurasi network, kemudian juga bangun VM dan migrate dengan HCX ataupun dengan link mode, terakhir dengan SRM untuk di RSS service. Jadi ini kurang lebih sekian demo dari saya. Mungkin ada pertanyaan dari Bapak dan Ibu sekalian. Tadi karena kalau saya lihat cuma satu pertanyaan dari Pak Hartono ya. Apakah sudah cukup jelas? Oke. Ada pertanyaan mungkin Bapak dan Ibu untuk webinar pada hari ini?
Oh ya, untuk perhitungan lessonnya gimana tuh Pak ya? Per lessonnya itu atau perhitungan lessonnya tuh per host yang sudah di-define atau per VMware yang udah di-build juga sih Pak? Terima kasih.
Oke. Jadi kalau sebetulnya seperti yang dijelaskan Arthur sebelumnya, untuk perhitungannya ini memang langsung per host Pak. Jadi per hostnya itu hitungannya unlimited VM selama resource-nya masih mencukupi. Ini sudah include dengan license, tadi ada vSphere, kemudian ada vSAN untuk storage virtualization, ada NSX juga, plus sama vCenter. Jadi itu Bapak nggak usah pusingin environment di AWS-nya. Tinggal subscribe aja kalau nggak salah tadi yang di yang di Singapura kalau nggak salah, region Singapura itu sekitar $10 per host. Portalnya bisa langsung dibuka sih, sebentar saya coba buka dulu ya. Nah ini pricingnya ada, saya masuk ke portalnya langsung cloudvmware.com. Nah ini pricingnya yang ini Pak. Kita pilih regionnya dulu. Untuk sekarang yang paling dekat adanya di Singapura memang. Nah ini kita bisa pilih yang production, ada i3 Metal ataupun i3N Metal. Jadi speknya seperti ini untuk per hostnya. Kalau yang i3 Metal yang paling murah itu satu hostnya 36 core, jadi ada 2 soket 18 core. Memorinya per hostnya 512 GB. Storage-nya sudah NVMe, jadi sudah 10,7 tera. Kemudian ini pricing kalau seandainya on demand Pak. Jadi hitungannya ini per host ya. $10 per jam. Kalau untuk pricing ini sudah include dengan license. Jadi Bapak nggak usah pusingin license-nya seperti apa, karena tinggal di-connect-in saja dengan on-premise environment. Gitu. Kalau seandainya mau yang lebih murah, sebetulnya kita bisa pilih langsung mau 1 year ataupun 3 years subscription sesuai dengan tampilan seperti ini. Jadi kalau memang sudah komit 3 tahun, harganya pun turun jauh jadi sekitar 50% ya Pak. Gitu. Jadi ini mungkin beda dengan native public cloud seperti AWS, Azure ataupun GCP ya. Jadi kalau mereka kan model pricingnya adalah per VM ya, per VM ataupun per service. Kalau ini hitungannya per host dengan include license, tapi unlimited VM sesuai dengan VM-nya resource yang di-provide di sini. Seperti itu.
Oke, terima kasih Pak.
Oke. Mungkin ada pertanyaan lain mengenai solusi VMC on AWS ini? Dari Bapak dan Ibu yang lain mungkin? Atau Atau sudah cukup jelas nih?
Ya, oke, kalau mungkin udah tidak ada pertanyaan, kita bisa lanjut ya mungkin ya. Ya, terima kasih Pak Heru untuk sharingnya. Nah, semoga Bapak Ibu sudah bisa dapat punya gambaran ya. Seperti apa sih sebenarnya solusi VMC on AWS ini. Nah, karena hari ini kami, seperti yang tadi saya udah jelasin sebelumnya akan ada kuis nih. Nah, sesuai dengan janji saya pada awal acara ini, kita akan ada kuis nih Pak. Nah, berikut adalah aku share screen dulu deh ya, bentar. Share screen. Nah, jadi ini adalah rule of games-nya kita. Oke, jadi kuis dapat diakses langsung melalui link yang nanti akan di-share oleh rekan saya, Mbak Santi. Ibu Santi. Ya, nanti akan di-share oleh Ibu Santi untuk linknya. Kemudian kita akan nanti kemungkinan kita ada 8 pertanyaan pilihan ganda terkait sesi yang sudah disampaikan. Nah, peserta menjawab paling cepat dan tepat akan mendapatkan poin paling tinggi untuk masing-masing pertanyaan, dan 3 peserta poin tertinggi akan mendapatkan hadiah voucher Tokped dari MII dan VMware. Nah, ini ada list pemenangnya nih. Pemenang pertama akan dapat 700.000 untuk vouchernya. Kemudian untuk pemenang kedua akan mendapatkan 500.000 dan pemenang ketiga akan dapat 300.000. Nanti untuk cara klaimnya nanti bisa hubungin aku atau rekan saya William, nanti akan saya sampaikan di akhir acara ini pada saat closing dan penutupan. Nah, mungkin Mbak Santi bisa take over, mohon bantuannya untuk take over untuk kuisnya. Ya, terima kasih.
Apakah share screen saya sudah terlihat?
Ya, sudah.
Oke. Untuk Bapak Ibu yang ingin join kuisnya, untuk link kuisnya sudah dicantumkan di kolom chat. Di situ sesuai dengan formatnya Bapak Ibu, di situ tertera nama strip perusahaannya atau perusahaan strip namanya. Mungkin bagi beberapa orang Bapak Ibu yang belum sesuai format, boleh diulang kembali seperti formatnya, yaitu nama strip perusahaannya atau perusahaan strip namanya gitu. Bagi Bapak Ibu juga yang misalnya mempunyai platform Quizizz, bisa melakukan kuisnya langsung dari platformnya, dari aplikasinya, bisa gunain kode enter join yang tertera di layar. Gitu. Mungkin untuk Bapak Syamsuddin boleh diulang kembali Bapak sesuai dengan format yang tertera. Karena untuk pemenang itu berdasarkan yang sesuai formatnya ya Kak ya. Mungkin untuk join kuisnya kita tunggu 1 menit lagi. Untuk saat ini sudah 38 peserta yang join. Mungkin untuk kuisnya sudah boleh kita mulai dari sekarang. Untuk Bapak Ibu yang masih mau ingin join kuisnya, tapi kuisnya ternyata sudah dimulai, tetap bisa join. Klik linknya yang tertera di kolom chat, masukin datanya sesuai format, nanti bakalan langsung bisa ikut join kuisnya gitu. Kita mulai dari sekarang untuk kuisnya. Selamat mengerjakan Bapak Ibu.
Iya, untuk kuisnya mungkin tadi kurang lebih jawabannya pertanyaannya ada di slide presentation yang dibawakan Arthur ya. Jadi kalau secara solusi ini, kalau misalnya Bapak dan Ibu mungkin tertarik kebutuhannya tadi untuk colocation seandainya, ataupun di RSS service, ataupun mau sebagai video on cloud juga bisa.
Nah, kami sambil menunggu nih kalau misalnya teman-teman ada pertanyaan dan lain sebagainya yang mau tanyain, boleh langsung aja di kolom chat, atau enggak bisa langsung tanya langsung ke kami, biar nanti kami bisa langsung jawab juga. Oh, sepertinya ada yang hebat banget nih, udah 88-nya berhasil nih ya.
Iya, ada yang 108 nih 100% ya di sini. Jadi untuk scoringnya sebetulnya lebih ke arah jawabannya plus dengan kecepatan untuk menjawabnya juga sih. Ini kalau saya lihat mungkin sudah banyak yang mengerti ya solusi VMC on AWS ini, karena memang solusinya sama persis dengan solusi VMware. Ya, cuma bedanya adanya di public cloud AWS seperti itu.
Tapi nanti platformnya sama ya, Koheru, untuk ini kalau misalnya.
Jadi kalau untuk platformnya sama persis, seperti tampilannya seperti vSphere ataupun vCenter sama persis juga. Jadi kalau untuk yang sudah familiar harusnya sudah cukup tahu lah.
Jadi teman-teman kalau misalnya sudah based on-nya VMware, harusnya kalau misalnya udah pindah ke VMC AWS, itu pasti udah paham lah ya.
Iya betul, sama persis karena tampilannya. Cuma mungkin konfigurasinya tadi seperti yang saya bukan di awal ya. Jadi tinggal bagaimana cara koneksinya dari lokal on-premise dengan yang ada di public cloud AWS tadi.
Menarik ya solusinya Bapak Ibu. Oke.
Ini apakah sudah final atau masih ada perubahan? Untuk pemenangnya 3 pemenang.
3 teratas.
3 ya, oke.
Nanti rekan saya tolong boleh dicatat ya Ko William. Kira-kira siapa yang akan.
Sudah ada yang menyusul rupanya nih.
Wah, iya.
Ini kalau saya lihat yang hanya sekitar 8 orang ya yang menjawab benar semua.
Iya. Sementara masih tersusul ya Bapak Indra.
Ya, lihat lagi apakah
Ya, Mbak Santi, kira-kira sudah atau harus
mungkin
menunggu
untuk
lagi?
kuisnya kita akhiri sekarang karena udah lewat dari waktunya.
Oke. Nah, berarti kita udah dapat pemenangnya ya. Oh, di akhir-akhir tersusul tuh.
Iya.
Oke, ini ya, ini adalah teman-teman yang berhasil.
Di posisi pertama ada Bapak Ramadhani dari Bungalun, kedua ada Jin S dari Sadana, yang ketiga ada Bapak Indra Dewa Putra dari CWS. Gitu.
Oke. Nah, oke, baik.
Mungkin dari saya diminta untuk Bapak Ibu boleh mengisi feedback form yang tertera di kolom chat yang sudah saya share. Nanti dari situ akan mendapatkan sertifikat of attendee untuk acara hari ini. Gitu. Thank you.
Oke, terima kasih Bu Santi sudah ngelit untuk kuisnya. Nah, Bapak Ibu, kita sudah sampai pada penghujung acara nih. Thank you so much untuk Mr. Arthur and Bapak Heru yang sudah sharing banyak hari ini. Dan sekali lagi saya terima kasih banyak untuk Bapak Ibu yang telah hadir hari ini. Kemudian selamat untuk para pemenang yang berhak mendapatkan hadiah dari kami. Nah, untuk klaim hadiahnya nanti bisa menghubungi saya dan rekan saya sebentar. Saya share screen dulu untuk emailnya biar Bapak Ibu bisa langsung share, bisa langsung ngeklaim. Nah, ini. Oke, screen saya sudah kelihatan? Sudah ya? Nah, oke, jangan khawatir nih, misalnya untuk klaim hadiahnya bisa langsung menghubungi saya atau rekan saya William di alamat email berikut. Nah, karena hadiahnya berupa voucher elektronik, nanti kami akan kirim kode vouchernya dan nanti Bapak Ibu dapat mengklaimnya lewat link yang nanti akan kami berikan lewat email. Nah, jangan khawatir untuk Bapak Ibu yang masih belum beruntung. Pada webinar kali ini, VMware bersama MI akan mengadakan webinar setiap kuarternya untuk bisa tetap share informasi-informasi terupdate untuk Bapak Ibu. Nah, saya juga ingin minta maaf karena tidak semua pertanyaan di kolom chat box dapat kami jawab secara langsung. Tapi kami akan berusaha kalau misalnya Bapak atau Ibu punya pertanyaan tambahan lainnya bisa langsung hubungi kami gitu. Nah, setelah acara ini selesai, kami akan mengirimkan feedback form juga seperti yang diceritakan sama Ibu Santi. Lewat kolom chat, kami akan berharap Bapak Ibu dapat memberikan kami apresiasi, kritik maupun saran, karena hal tersebut dapat sangat berarti bagi kami. Nah, sekali lagi saya ucapkan terima kasih banyak, dan sampai jumpa di lain kesempatan. Pak, saya Hendy Halim, saya undur diri. Terima kasih. Bye-bye. Jangan lupa di email ya pemenang-pemenangnya ya. Bisa di email ke saya atau ke William. Oke, sekian dan terima kasih.